Hello, fermented folks. Welcome to another episode of Fermented Fiction. Today, we have a very special guest, a compatriot of mine from the Seattle HWA, the founder of the Seattle HWA, I will say. It was technically founded before her, but then, she brought it back to life. The resurrector, at any rate. Time.
Ooh.
The Seattle HWA, Brianna Malotke. We're really excited to have you on the show, and we will have her introduce herself very soon. And today we're going to be talking about Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. Bram Stoker's Dracula. But before we do that, we're going to do what we usually do, which is introduce who the hell we are. And I'll just start since I'm already blabbering. I am Clay from Fulham, one of your co-hosts, and my update today is the Crypticon writing contest. I have the shirt on right here. Camp Crypticon, what up? That's it.
Nice.
I'm repping that today because I'm finally starting to get some contest submissions trickling in. I've talked about this a little bit on the show in the past, but for those of you who don't know, I am the editor for the Crypticon Seattle writing contest, which becomes an anthology. We also contract a few pros for that anthology and stuff. So when you get published in it, it's pretty cool because you not only get a cash prize and a trip to Crypticon, you get the whole weekend pass for free, but you also get published with some professional writers. So it feels like being published in a pro anthology, which is pretty fun and pretty awesome. Good opportunity. So if you're a writer out there and you're in the Seattle area or might want to come to the Seattle area May 2nd through 4th for Crypticon, send me a story, enter the contest. It's only $10. And if you win, it's like a $400 value plus publication. So it's a lot of fun. That's my update. Jeremy.
Oh, me. Oh, sweet Jesus. All right. Well, here I am. Well, my update is, it's going to, really reward those readers who are not readers, listeners or viewers. Maybe readers if they turn on the closed captioning on YouTube, if they're doing that. But it's going to reward those who pay attention to things that don't matter in this show. In that, in a previous update, I did mention that I got a watch. This watch does tell me how good I sleep. So now I know for sure that I sleep like shit. So that's good. That science,
Saw that coming.
Science is telling me that I'm bad at sleep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's my update.
Add it to the list. Add it to the pile. What are you gonna do anything about that, or do you have plans to do anything about that, or are you just gonna kind of accept it and continue?
Maybe one day. Look, it's been, what year is it? 33 straight years of sleeping terribly. So yeah. In fact, until a doctor told me I had chronic insomnia, I was like, oh, this is just what sleep is like. It's not.
No, it is in fact not when you don't do it. All right. Well, thank you for that. I hope you get that figured out, or at the very least that your watch continues to bully you about it. Travis, what are you up to?
I have a couple things. I'm trying to kind of think which one I want to do. I'm going to just do the fun. I don't know. They're all fun. But I coach at an MMA gym. I've mentioned that on the show before. I'm a grappling coach for potential future fighters. And they're all getting good. And that comes with both a positive and a negative. The positive being like, all right, you guys can wrestle better now.
Oh, no.
Oh, God.
The camera went away.
Oh,
you guys can wrestle better now. The negative is I'm out of shape.
Yeah.
And so I used to be able to just go in, not stretch, not warm up, and like kick their butts. And now I'm still winning, but I'm like dead. I have to go like be in a coma for 20 minutes after because they're getting good now. And I'm like, okay, I guess I have to start working out if I want to like keep my pride as the coach that still wins these matches. Or I can just give up and let them like start waxing the floor with me because it's knocking on the door. They're getting pretty solid. So I guess I'm doing something okay.
That's what you get for doing your job.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
say start start letting them just wipe the floor with you while you can still say that you're letting that happen.
Or I can just pull the classic like overweight coach and retire and just be like,
Yeah.
back in my day I would have beat you, but I don't roll anymore. I could do that, but I don't think I would feel very good about myself if I did that. So I'm just gonna have to get in shape.
Well, I think there's a reason most of those coaches come to practice a 6-pack deep is because they need a way to feel better about themselves. But those are your options. At least you have them out in front of you, and you kind of know what's up ahead.
Yeah.
But good job getting people coached up. That's cool. I hope that your fighters from your gym start winning some matches and doing well. That's
They haven't
exciting.
been. We're hoping they're going to be in some cage fights soon. They're getting some more boxing and kickboxing experience under their belt first, because you don't want to just throw someone in there when they haven't been punched in the face, because that's a whole experience that people haven't really usually had, and it changes a lot. So
Yeah.
It does indeed change the game. Brianna knows something about that. Do you, Brianna? How many times have
do.
you been punched in the face, if I might ask?
Quite a few. I used to spar in boxing.
Nice.
So
Nice.
I've been boxing for like 5 or 6 years. And I stopped sparring because I was starting to get a little nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Very fair. Yep.
Were you starting to get good enough that your coach was going harder on you?
So a little bit.
Nice.
I trained at a fighting gym.
Mhm.
And so like my coach was a pro fighter, and I could never make it to the sparring times. So I sparred with him.
Nice.
And then I would spar with some of the other fighters when they were very casually working out at the gym, and he would make them spar with me.
Nice. That's awesome.
But yeah, taking one straight in between the headgear is rough.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
That'll do it. That'll do it. Well, at least we have a 100% have been punched in the face ratio here on the show tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't always happen.
Well,
All the way around.
thanks to you, it is 100%, Clay.
Yep, thanks to me. I punched Jeremy in the face, I think both times.
Oh.
Yeah, literally every time I've been punched in the face, it was Clay.
Nice.
Both
aiming
were
at
accidents.
Somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah, both were accidents.
Jeremy, I think he's punched you more than me, and I'm his brother.
I know. You would think, hey, my brothers
That's rough.
have punched me more, but they never landed the face, because then you'd see,
Yeah,
you know,
then they'd have Deb to deal with, and that's just a whole thing.
that's, yeah.
Well, speaking of getting punched in the face, and that's not really what this is. This is a terrible transition. Hi, Brianna. What's up? Who the hell are you,
Hi.
and why are you here?
Yeah, so you kind of said earlier, I know you through the HWA Seattle chapter. I've been co-chair for coming up on 2 years, which is wild. Yeah, I'm a horror and a romance writer. So in horror, I mostly stick to poetry and flash fiction. So I have a few dozen pieces published, as well as 3 individual poetry collections. And then under romance, I write very steamy things under a pen name called Tori Fields, and I have 8 books out now. So yes, I'm very excited about talking about Dracula. So thank you for adjusting your February movie.
We're excited to talk about it too, and we're very excited
yeah.
to have you. Glad you're kicking so much ass out there. Super proud of you. It's awesome that you have like 12 books. Yeah, just excited to see it all the time. And I know you've got a brand new one coming out, right?
Yes.
Just finished it?
I just finished it. So I have a poetry book called Death is a Tease, and it'll be out in April or May. I can't remember. And I have a romance book that'll be out later this month. So
Nice.
Very exciting.
And we'll talk a little bit more about your crossover of horror and poetry at the end, because I definitely want you to shout out your first poetry collection. That one's really awesome. But before we do that, we'll get into some Dracula, because that's what the people is here to see.
That's certainly
Um,
what Zeb is here to see.
That's certainly what
Yeah.
Zeb's here to see.
Zeb's on.
Hey, Zeb. And I assume Philip Bridgers. Hi, Philip Bridgers.
Hello, Philip. We meet again.
We meet again, yet again. So those are our OGs, Philip Bridgers and Zeb. Shout out to the homies that have been here since the first days of this show. And shout out to everybody else who's joined us along the way. Let's get you some awesome debates about Dracula. So those of you who have been here before already know this, but those of you who may be new, because we have new viewers every day, which is very exciting, we do this segment called Forced Entrollment. And the reason it is called that is because you are either forced to be a troll or forced to defend whatever book, movie, or show we're talking about from said troll. You will be given your roll based on a D20. High roll defends, low roll attacks, no matter how you actually feel. And you got 10 minutes to do it. Jeremy and Brianna are going to be our debaters today. Are both of you ready to roll?
Oh, I'm so ready.
Yes, and you're rolling for me.
I am.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
have the 10-minute timer ready right now. So whenever.
Oh, very good. Oh, wow. That's incredible.
What'd you get, Jeremy?
I got a natural 1.
Ah,
That's-
well, Clayton, you could tell us your number just for kicks and giggles, but it doesn't really matter.
I will say, Jeremy made me this dice with his 3D printer, this massive
Nice.
orange D20. And he made it to roll really well. I don't think I've lost with it yet. This is an 18 that I rolled just now,
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
which is overkill because I essentially just like curb stomped a level 1 rat in a dungeon right now with that one. But
You went full Renfield on a rat's head.
yeah, I
Just went
did.
all the way in there. Yeah.
Full Renfield. Give me a kitten. Okay,
Give me a
I'm really
kitten,
glad
guys.
for the record that they did not give that man a kitten.
I'm
I
pretty
thought they
jazzed
might.
about that myself.
I thought they might. There were a lot of babies in that movie. So anyway,
More than you would think, yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, so it's
I'm
time.
a child.
Only one baby
Right,
and one
only
child,
one
right,
baby.
Brianna?
Only
One
one
baby, one
Details,
child.
details.
Okay.
Let's take it easy on the infanticide references. Okay. It's time to get going. Travis, you've got the timer, so you can count them
do.
in, and I'm going
All
to
right.
step back.
Let's have a clean debate. Remember that you just be polite to each other. No delineation of time, but don't take it all. Are you ready?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you want to
3,
go first?
2,
Oh,
1.
that's,
Well, Brianna, you're going first because you're defending the movie.
yep. So
Attacker.
go on ahead.
Attacker goes second. Brianna, you're up in 3, 2, 1, go.
So, as far as Dracula movies go, this is one of the best interpretations of the book, if you've read the book. And it really holds up to all the little slow bits in the book. And I have a costume background, and so watching this just gives me good vibes, good feelings. They're stunning, even if they're not historically accurate. And there is a adequate amount of boobs from both female and males in this movie, which is not said in a lot of vampire movies.
Hey, yeah, you know, I will give you that. There is something special about the vampires in this film that becoming a vampire just makes you really want to get them boobs out. And that's really cool. What is less cool, I will say, is that this is maybe the movie that this is the most times this has happened to me in a movie where I just have to stop and think to myself, what the fuck is going on? What is even happening right now? Like, okay, just right off the bat, Dracula is in this weird hot dog looking armor, ribbed for somebody's pleasure. I don't know whose. And then
It's flayed muscle.
yeah,
Yeah.
why not? Let's do that in the 1400s, 1300s, whatever. Then we skip ahead 400 years, and the movie just skips no time in showing us the Carfax, which is nice. There are spider rats at one point, I think. I don't know. There's a point where a vampire lady just bites Keanu Reeves right on the dick, just right on there. There's so much that's just, why is this
It's like a
in
fever
a
dream.
movie? It is. I agree with that. And everyone from beginning to end, they act like they've never seen or heard of another human being before, and this is their first time being in the same room as one. Just, it's incredible.
I love that take.
It's, yeah. So that's my opening. That's where my head's at.
I love it. I've never seen another human being. Okay. I will say the dialogue in the movie is, for me, I really enjoy the stark contrasts between their different little like accents of what London in the 1890s is versus Dracula, whose accent changes depending on what form he's in, even though he's from Transylvania.
Well, yeah,
And-
old Transylvania is a
Yeah.
very different accent from young Transylvania, young but older Transylvania.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
don't know.
yeah.
Well, one thing, since you bring up accents, I can't not bring up Keanu Reeves' accent.
Yeah.
For the love of God. It's
Very
it becomes-
romantic.
why not? Yeah. It really makes it clear why in no other movie he's ever done an accent other than Surfer Dude. Oh my goodness. It's positively incredible. But go
Yeah.
on.
I was gonna say, I love the way the overlays are used, the little mixing of practical effects and what in the 1992 was being used as far as, computers and all of that. You get some lovely doses of color in this very dreary London movie, like green smoke and blue flames.
Yeah, there's some of that, and there is also a point in this movie where it just shows that in a graveyard somebody had crucified what looks to be a werewolf, and nobody talks about it. It just move right along. And
I think it was just a wolf, but yeah.
I mean,
because the wolves were released from the London Zoo.
Yes. Well, at least that one really adorable wolf, he was just a sweet, precious little guy. All things considered, he never looked threatening. That's not part
Great
of
dog content in this movie.
Solid dog content.
Solid dog content.
Now let's see. As far as, but I think my main criticism is just there's so much that's just weird and confusing and doesn't make sense within the context of the movie, and especially having come off watching Nosferatu earlier for this very show.
Okay.
The difference in how you were able to tell this story is, well, I'm not going to say who did it better, but it wasn't Francis Ford Coppola.
No, I think it's glorious because it's this weird mashup. Like they storyboarded the whole thing and they were like, you know what would be great if we just try this? And then nobody cut it, right? And so you have this like peacock feathers turn into
oh my god
bolts of light, and then you have like people's faces over done, and
oh yeah, speaking of the peacock feathers, no one in the world can convince me that those peacock feathers didn't just obscure Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder porking down in in I'm pretty sure that's
they
what
did more
happened.
than kiss. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they slammed each other down
only
pig style, I tell you what.
But
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
And following that up with yet another, we'll say, confused sex scene. Mina follows Lucy into a hedge maze only to find Lucy getting plowed by a werewolf at one point. So that's
Yeah.
fun. I don't know.
I mean, we don't know if he was full wolf at that point, just to be clear. He was very articulated, like a man form. So half wolf, half man. We didn't really get to see the details.
I mean, not, for sure, not what I was expecting coming into a Dracula movie. Just a lot more,
I will say-
more werewolves happening.
Excellent representation of all forms, like vampire lore, right? He
Oh,
can
yeah.
be smoke, he can control winds and storms, he can be a pile of rats.
Yeah, it's just a
Mind
really,
connection, he's part wolf.
yeah, it's just a
has
really
bat
clear
form.
representation of how, like, you can't just use a book as a screenplay.
Also,
'Cause a lot
jump
of it
scare
gets
after
really
sex
silly.
scene.
If you say so. I don't.
Excellent.
I mean, honestly, every time something happened in this movie, I just found myself being like, well, I guess this might as well also happen. Yeah, let's. Gary Oldman shows up with a baby, and then they eat that baby. That's enough for 3 vampire ladies, I guess.
yeah, it's like virgin blood, right? And then their mission, right, is to continuously drain Harker.
Yeah.
So,
not?
like a good little treat. Here's the baby.
I mean, if they're filling up on your boy Harker, then I don't know why they need the baby at all. You know?
Also, excellent
Got a lot more
casting.
blood in that boy.
Casting.
I can't
Anthony
argue
Hopkins
that.
is my favorite Van Helsing, and Gary Oldman is my favorite Dracula.
So you don't prefer the Dracula from Blade Trinity, who was the guy from Prison Break?
No. No.
Very well.
I also have an odd take on favorite Batman. So, like, this is just a personal preference on favorite Dracula. But
Okay. I suppose that's fair. Although I think my favorite Dracula would be the Dracula from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. Fabulous Dracula.
I love that.
Yeah. But anyway, yes, this movie is terrible. More evidence, you say? Yes, I would love to. So, for a not insignificant portion of this film, Dracula's hair is a butt. I don't know why it's a butt, but it is. And it's just there. And
He's
nobody...
trapped in the castle.
Trapped in the
the
castle?
old-
All right,
It's
beer of the
historic.
week. Stop.
Oh, hey, yeah.
Yeah.
Jabbering. No more defense. No more attack. We are done with that segment.
Love it.
You know, this is such a hard movie to attack, not for any issues of quality, but just because
It's 90s.
so much happens
That was.
Oh,
that
I will have
Why?
to sap to say in the whole history of this show, that was probably the debate that I have been the most wanting to like jump in every moment, because there were so many good just little snippets y'all threw out there. Like, well
Don't
done.
worry, there's
Well done.
plenty more.
I put debates in quotes because I think halfway through it kind of became a conversation,
Yeah,
which
it
was a great
it was just kind
conversation.
of talking. Like it's like when somebody talks with me about Speed Racer and they start telling me all the things that they hate about Speed Racer, and I'm just sitting like, man, I fucking love this movie.
Everything you say is making me love this movie more.
Yeah.
And I
Hey.
feel like Brianna was feeling that a little bit. Everything Jeremy was raising as a issue, she
I
was
was like,
just
but
like,
that's why I like it.
I mean, yeah, I agree that was dope.
Yeah, like it looks like somebody just didn't edit it. They were like, let's leave all the ideas in.
Yeah.
Right. No, I think you're right. Which explains like how they got away with the set peacock just walking through the shot. And they were like, that's cool. Just leave
Hey,
it.
yeah, you know what?
If
Let's
it
do
was
a
even
match
a real
cut.
peacock, right? It could have
Yeah.
just been somebody with some feathers.
We
That was
don't
their
know.
whole job, right?
Yep.
It was probably one of the wardrobe people like debuting a different dress for Winona Ryder when she becomes a vampire. They're like, what about this one, Francis?
Yeah.
And then it just like fluttered down in front of the camera for a moment. and he
I will
he's like
say,
brilliant.
like costumes for characters, this movie is insane. I love
Yeah.
like that's why I love
Oh,
it so
yeah.
much.
We definitely
Well-
need to talk about that. But first, we're gonna do beer of the week or fermented drink of the week.
Woo!
Mm-hmm.
Or
Or
whatever you got
non-fermented
of the
drink
week.
of the week.
Whatever you want to drink of the week. We usually do some fermented action on here, and I think we're all rocking at least alcohol tonight. But I know that you don't have fermentation,
I have a
Brianna.
rum drink.
Nice.
It's a
Excellent.
Mai Tai.
Hey,
And a
rum's
tiki cup.
fermented.
All right. All
A
right.
Mai Tai in a tiki cup. Did you make it yourself?
No, my husband made it for me.
Nice.
That's
it
what
good?
husbands are for, really.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Travis, what are you drinking?
Like I said, I'm going back through the whiskeys because it's too expensive to buy whiskey for every episode. So making its second debut on the show, Widow Jane, 10 years aged, and it was from Brooklyn, New York. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a
you
Brooklyn
go.
whiskey, Brooklyn bourbon. That's good. I like it a lot.
Hell yeah.
That's all I got.
Yeah. Jeremy.
Well, what I've got here is this ye old Buckshot Cabernet Sauvignon, because I wanted something that looked bloody.
Nice.
This is aged in bourbon barrels, so that's pretty fun.
Mm.
I don't know that it makes a difference, but I'm gonna drink this wine now.
I have
Right on.
noticed that a lot of things now will do that. Like, oh, you like bourbon? Like, try this thing that's aged in bourbon barrels. I don't think it makes much of a difference, but sherry. I've had whiskey aged in sherry casks. I hate it. It like the sherry tastes just the sherry taste is forward, and like that actually does make a difference.
Oh yes.
Okay. And finally, I am drinking a Trickster from Black Raven, which is my favorite local brewery. Big fan of Black Raven. And I just think that of all the Draculas, Gary Oldman's Dracula is maybe the trickiest. So I
Yes.
thought he's a tricky boy.
That's a
And
tricky
so
one
I-
right there.
So I
He's
thought
pretty
this was
tricky.
fitting.
I like it. All right.
You got
Well-
some facts?
I do. I almost forgot about my facts. I'm so eager to jump into talking about this, but oh boy, are there facts.
Oh,
I think when movies like sit in the canon for a while, they usually get a long laundry list of IMDb facts of people digging stuff up the longer they last. So I tried to cherry pick the best ones. My favorite one. So the wedding scene is a reshoot that was done in a Los Angeles Greek Orthodox church, and it was canonically valid.
They're married.
Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder got actually married according to the Orthodox Church and had to go back and get that marriage annulled, which is a whole process. I have friends
awesome.
who have gone through annulment, and it's not easy. It takes a while, and so that's hilarious. Apparently, in an interview in the future, Ryder said that sometimes she still texts Keanu and says, "Hello, husband," and they are both completely
So
fine
cute.
with it. So,
Cute.
Francis Ford Coppola had the entire cast sit down and read together the entirety of Bram Stoker's Dracula out loud during it took two whole days. And yeah, I guess he just wanted them to get the feel of their characters, and that's one way to do it.
It's a flex.
Scrolling a little bit here. Yeah, there was a bunch of drama between Oldman and Winona Ryder. Ryder has since basically just said it's because I was basically a teenager still, and I was acting like a teenager. And she is now friends with Gary Oldman, but said that it was not a pleasant filming experience for her because he was a professional and doing his job, and she was a teenager. So,
Okay.
oh, Gary Oldman was drunk when they filmed the razor blade scene.
Sure.
Jesus.
How else would you be?
They also filmed it at midnight, so he was both drunk and exhausted, I'm sure, which is a great combination when holding, hopefully, a fake razor blade.
I hope so, because he licked that sucker.
It's really impressive to still be drunk after going through all that hair and makeup.
Right?
For real.
Right.
Probably drank during hair and makeup.
You would
right?
have to.
I would think he was drinking during hair and makeup. Francis Ford Coppola has claimed that Bram Stoker's name was included in the title because he has a tradition of putting the author's names in the titles that he wasn't going to break. And he cited Mario Puzo's The Godfather and John Grisham's Rainmaker. People have pointed out, however, that he did not put S.E. Hinton's name in The Outsiders, nor did he put it in Rumblefish. And so people are like, we think that was a copyright thing because Universal Studios still owned the rights to the simple title Dracula. So that is why, Clayton, you had to say Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula is because Universal Studios still had the rights to just Dracula.
Nice.
There's a lot more, but I'm going to just skip to, so we are not here all day in this segment. Some of the notable differences between the book and the movie, I think, are fun to point to. Bram Stoker's novel. This is considered one of the most faithful adaptations of the novel. But there are some very big differences that I'm sure we'll talk about in the discussion segment. The whole romance was basically added. Mina and Dracula are not like a reincarnated wife of Dracula. She's just a pure soul. And so Dracula really wants her blood more than other people's blood because she's a very good person, essentially. Then there was some different stuff with the ending is the same yet different. Like he dies in the exact same way. He gets his throat cut and stabbed through the chest with the blade and cut off. But instead of Mina doing it, it is Professor Van Helsing and Jonathan. Then there's this is an interesting fact to me because there's stuff like that where it's like, okay, we're going to put Mina more at the forefront. But then there's stuff like in the book, Mina actually asks to be hypnotized. She isn't forced by Professor Van Helsing or persuaded by Professor Van Helsing, which was in the movie, which is a weird change to me. And then in the book as well, because the romance was added in the movie, Mina almost wants to be turned, but in the book she fights against it, really doesn't want to be turned, is kind of forced on her. And she's disgusted afterward and is then saved when he dies, is turned back into kind of a normal human. And then the other biggest change that the movie made was really subtle. At the beginning of the movie, they basically imply that Renfield was a realtor before Harker and went crazy when he tried to seal the deal. Renfield and Harker are not related at all. Renfield is just already crazy in the book. So he has nothing to do with the realty company and has no connection to Jonathan whatsoever. So those were just some of the weird little changes they made. And if you guys, if anyone wants to go, there are 80 trivia facts on the IMDb page. And some of them are just duh. And some of them are kind of fun, little snippets about the shoot behind the stage. One more is during filming, a double was used to portray the wolf beast because Gary Oldman was allergic to the makeup. So
Yes.
Awesome.
Oh, and then one more because I almost missed this one. I just have to point out because this is one of my favorite movie facts of all time. I always cite it. The actor that plays Renfield is I lost his name. 1 second. There it is. I'm almost there. Okay. I'm clicking so fast. Tom Waits, the folk singer, who has been in a lot of things as small little side roles, is the actor that portrays Renfield. I think he does a pretty good job in this. But my favorite fact about Tom Waits is there's an interview, a notorious interview where he comes to the interview show. It's in the UK and he's really drunk and has just chain smoked a pack of cigarettes. And his voice
This is about to be the Joker, isn't it?
inspired Heath Ledger's Joker. He like got that from Tom Waits, and that's one of my favorite facts in
Nice.
cinema history is that Heath Ledger heard a Tom Waits interview on a UK talk show and was like,
Yeah.
that is the Joker.
That's the one. What a strange little synchronistic transference.
It makes
of that
sense, you
talent.
know. What is Dracula if not a Batman?
I mean, he is literally that, or a man bat, perhaps.
He
Also,
is way more man bat by the end. Yeah.
Brianna, can I guess your favorite Batman?
Yeah.
Is it Ben Affleck? Is it Batfleck?
No.
Oh, okay.
How dare you,
Because-
sir? How dare you?
You said it
Val
was like
Kilmer?
you said it was a hot take, so I was. Oh, is it Val
Oh
Kilmer?
no, sorry, it's not. It's Adam West.
Oh, yeah, okay.
that's-
the OG.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That
Those are
take
my
doesn't
favorite.
seem
I feel like
aggressively hot.
any pick is defensible except for George Clooney.
Yeah.
I will say that's one of my favorite Batman movies, though.
That it's
Like
bonkers.
Adam West, and then the George Clooney one,
Because it's bananas. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
which is why I was like, I
it's the
love
Speed
this
Racer
movie.
of Batman.
100%.
Speed Racer is so good that it's good. You take that and you put it right back in
I'm
your
like-
mouth, Travis.
No.
Okay, but the one with George Clooney is such a comic book movie,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you're in Gotham.
Oh yeah.
They are wild, like, and it's just my background's in costume design, and so I think that's what really pulls me into like these very outlandish movies.
Mhm.
And I kind of gloss over maybe why they're not a good movie, because I'm like, but the costuming, how can you not love it?
I mean, that's usually the main thing that weirder movies have going for them. It's like, oh, but the costumes are so good and everybody's just doing their best.
So
Which
you're
is one of
telling
my
me
favorite things about Dracula is the costume designer was an
Mhm.
advertising person before this. She
Ah.
only had like a couple costume credits.
Wow.
And Coppola was like, we're gonna treat costumes like the sets. And so that's where they
Mm.
put the budget.
Nice.
So
you're telling me before we dive too deep into Dracula, are you telling me that like the suit up scene in that Batman movie with the bat nipples and like the
And the
crotch
butt?
shots and the butts,
yes,
You
were
gotta
like,
show the
this
that's
is
butts,
all
man.
you want. Yeah.
You need the butts. Come on.
I mean, I don't think anyone's denying that. The costumes in this movie are absolutely bananas and they're awesome.
Mhm.
And they create the whole vibe. The vibe is cohesive, I will say. As crazy as this movie is, it's a cohesive movie. It knows what it is and it leans all the way the fuck into it.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate. I did want to say too, I liked your note on Renfield because that actually is from the Nosferatu ripoff of Dracula, you know, which is all Nosferatu originally is. The original Nosferatu movies just as straight up. We couldn't get copyright on Dracula, so we made our own movie and we changed like
Yep.
3 things.
Yeah.
But the Renfield, it's interesting because he does that in a couple places in this movie where he takes things from Nosferatu and puts them in Dracula as well, which is kind of interesting. I don't know. Maybe he just thought certain elements of Nosferatu worked better. Which I do tend to agree. I do think Renfield having an actual like more of a tie to every character is better for the story's cohesion as a whole.
Mhm.
Whereas in the book, it's just like, oh, here's a random crazy dude.
Yeah,
Want
otherwise
to
he's
pop
just
into his world for a little
some
bit.
They
dude.
gave the side characters in the book, right, a little bit more weight in the
Yeah.
movie. Like
Mhm.
Lucy Suitors.
Mhm,
They were
for
a,
sure.
a bigger part in the movie.
I think too that goes to the POV that we get and the change. And I don't think like you can never make a truly like perfect adaptation of Dracula because it's from diaries and letters. Like so the only points of view we're getting are Jonathan, Mina, and Van Helsing and the doctors recounting events that have already happened. And so it's like, yeah, you can't really. There's always going to be additions, and that's why I've never understood that as a complaint with Dracula adaptations, as much as like I get mad about Frankenstein ones, but that's just because no one gets the monster right, and I'm like, it's not that hard.
Yeah, it's
read
just
through
the
the whole
concept
movie.
of the uncanny valley mixed with bad parenting.
Exactly.
Easy.
But Dracula, I think there's enough, like you said, Brianna, there's enough like room to play with the side characters that the movie's just ripe for a little more growth. And the book is still going to stand on its own, but you can make a good adaptation that adds a little flavor using those characters that are basically just like pass by names.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have. I mean, there's a reason there's been 5 adaptations of Dracula in one form or another in the last 5 years, 6 years, with the Demeter, with Nosferatu, and all kinds of spin-offs. I mean, Dracula makes an appearance in so many things. I mean, he's in that terrible Van Helsing movie from the 2000s.
Hey, Travis, you want to cover that movie?
I love that movie too, Brianna.
I think that
terrible.
movie.
It's so campy. I love it.
It's so bad.
It's a marvelous
so
time.
Awesome. Yes.
Travis, do you want to watch that movie for the show?
I will. I loved Van
we've-
Helsing as a kid. I've watched that movie so many times, and then I revisited it recently after entering my full snobbery that I'm in now. And I was like, oh man, do I enjoy this still? Yes. Is this bad? Oh yes.
I know. I know.
I mean, a fully automatic crossbow. What else do you want? You know what I mean?
I mean, that's basically all I want.
Jeremy, did you lie at all? We really didn't do that. We're already in the open doc. I know Clayton said
Hey, yeah.
I gotta know, did you lie at all with your...
I didn't. I'm gonna just stand by my laurels and my arguments. This is a bad movie. Hey, I love a lot about this terrible movie, but it's still a very bad movie.
I'm surprised by that. I thought you would like this movie. This is like the Hitchhiker's Guide in movie form and horror.
I mean, okay, you say horror. That's pretty loose
fair.
When talking about this. There's only so scary a movie can be when the main scary guy spends half his time with his hair as a butt, and then, oh my God, somebody at some point says, vampires, they can go out in the day, but they just lose most of their powers, and then they cut to Gary Oldman being not an old man. Yeah, I guess the son turns Dracula into like a hot guy. Just a hot dude.
No, he just drank all the people on the boat.
Mm-hmm.
He got his life force back.
Spry.
All he had to do was go on a killing spree. Then why did he ever get old?
Because he was living in that dreary castle, bro.
he ran out of gypsies.
The love of his life died. He was sad.
He was bummed out.
Okay.
Bummed for 400 years.
That's a long time to be bummed.
That's a long time to hold one single mood.
Well, he turned the brides, and they were very fun. So
they were fun.
He probably had
boobs
a,
out a lot of the time,
years, which was very impractical. That was unnecessary boobs. But we also got Keanu Reeves' nipples, so
we did get his nipples. And we did get him getting bitten on the dick. That's pretty fun.
That was another
inner
one
thigh.
of the...
You don't really know.
You don't really know.
Don't we though?
Another one of the facts. Another one of the facts on the IMDb page was that it was written into the script that the Brides of Dracula would be topless, but no one on set was confident enough to ask them to show their boobs. No, I think I can't remember which one of the actresses was just okay, we're doing this, and took her top off. But I guess everybody was just how do we do this?
Just elaborate headpieces, skirts, no top.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What a look.
Just framing it out.
Hell of a
Victorian women could never. Right?
They wouldn't dare.
No, they were thinking. They were getting a little scandalous about just the Arabian Nights. They had no idea what old Harker was up to in the castle. I gotta say too, I love how just for some reason 2 of those vampire ladies were fused together at one point.
Yeah.
Did we all see that, or am I crazy?
No, that's.
I hate that.
That was there.
That's
so unnerving.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's one of those things where someone said, what if we did this? And somebody just bolted up from the line of cocaine they were snorting, and they were like, "Yes."
Yes,
Wait,
absolutely.
we're connected.
Someone
Well-
was like, "What if we did this?" And Francis was like, "Already did it. Keep her moving."
God.
I was thinking the same thing.
The biggest comment I've always wanted to make about this movie, and it just solidified when I rewatched it literally like an hour ago, is this movie did for Dracula what Paradise Lost did for Satan.
Yes,
And
I
that's-
said that immediately. I said that immediately when me and Deanna
Yeah.
were watching it.
Oh my God.
Within the first 5 minutes of the movie, I was like, "Oh, so this is Dracula's Paradise Lost." Okay.
Yeah, where
Yeah, I
everybody
was just-
everybody's sense has been like, oh yeah, Dracula's like really hot and he's in love with the people that he wants to eat, and it's like, no, that is the Dracula from Francis Ford Coppola's movie. Just like everyone's like, Satan's just misunderstood, and I'm like, you've read Paradise Lost.
Well,
That's the Paradise Lost Satan.
Yeah.
That's sexy Satan.
It's an incredible.
sexy Satan.
It's an incredible realization to have. Just being like, "Oh, this is why Twilight happened." Okay, I get. All right.
Mhm. That's
Brianna?
just like that Joker reference he made. It goes all the way down. It goes all the way back. to
Yeah,
Francis.
exactly.
Brianna.
Twilight comes from all the. It's a very odd chain of events, but it's basically right. 9/11, My Chemical Romance.
I've heard that.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
that whole thing, right?
Mhm.
What?
So,
I don't know this thing. What is this?
9/11, My
lay it
Chemical
out.
Romance,
So
Twilight?
9/11 happens, right?
and that
Sure.
There
gave
are
us
ways like
teenage sex Dracula.
we gotta make music
Okay.
when we have My Chemical Romance, and then other bits happen that I don't quite remember.
I'm gonna find it.
She basically, right? See, she cut.
Here we go. I got it.
Yeah, okay.
We're-
I'm like,
we're
it
gonna
all
res-
connects, but
Oh
I'm missing
no.
the middle chunk.
No. It's not. It's Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey. So here it is.
Okay,
Well, yeah,
yeah.
I've always
It's
intertwined
her
those.
Oh, yeah.
50 Shades
So-
of Grey. Yeah.
A viral theory says Gerard Way creates the band My Chemical Romance after witnessing the attacks on 9/11. The band's music inspires Stephanie Myers to write a Hamer vampire romance called the Twilight book series that in turn inspires E.L. James' 50 Shades trilogy. So the
It's
argument
Twilight
they made
fanfic.
online was 9/11 led to 50 Shades of Grey.
That's what it is. Twilight's
The
just in
true
there.
devastation of 9/11.
I don't know if I want to say that on air.
No, that's definitely not something we
That's-
should have
no.
said. I
No.
obviously,
and it
obviously-
led to Robert Pattinson or Rob Battenbat to becoming Batman.
Rob Bat and Bat.
Yeah,
100%.
Sure.
Rob Bat-
and also the main, the lead in the lighthouse, which is just
Yeah.
awesome.
Great
He
movie.
boned a mermaid or something. Yeah,
Or something.
or something.
or something.
He killed the shit out of a seagull, regardless. But so we're getting back to Dracula, right? I do have to say, in terms of book adaptations, I do really like how loyal they were to the subject material. It's one of the only Dracula adaptations that shows the suitor scene with Anna at all, which the way they do it is bananas, I will say. They just like roll in on a conveyor belt, but you know, there's sort of a way it sort of happens
The
that way in the books
chemistry
too.
between them, though.
Yeah,
And this
yeah.
is where you definitely have like the romance aspect in the movie, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, if Lucy asked, like, they would be in a foursome together.
100%.
Oh yeah,
You've
Like,
got a three-way meet
they
cute right
we're
here.
ready to do whatever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
oh yeah. They would make what I can only assume is the Eiffel Tower with the propeller sticking out the top.
Oh my God. This isn't a chaotic episode. I will say though, out of the suitor scenes, my thought coming out was like, Cary Elwes played a good guy once, and then just to spend his lifetime playing a douchey British guy.
He was also a good guy in Robin Hood Men in Tights. Or did you
so
forget?
he played a good guy 2 times, and then every role since, and there's probably been more. I'm sorry, Cary Elwes, if you're listening. Your career
Sorry,
is more
Cary.
expansive than that. But everything else I've seen him in, he's just like British villain.
Sure.
British.
Hey,
jerk.
he was a lovely father figure in Liar Liar. Or did you forget about that too, Travis?
I did. I tried very hard to forget about Liar Liar.
Liar. Can I also say this? Did anybody notice that this movie, or maybe it's the other way around, but is essentially The Mummy?
You know,
I mean,
think, yeah.
you've
Other
got
way.
it's definitely the other way in terms of time, but
Mhm.
I noticed so many similarities between this movie and The Mummy, and it's fascinating how so many stories really just are the same story, but with like a different skin.
Yeah.
Because they totally added that part, the romance part, about
Mhm.
which in that way is very much not the story of Dracula, like at all, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
They added that, and that is the basis of the Mummy story, which is that eternal love. And they put that into Dracula, and I'm curious, why do you guys think that they felt that was necessary? Did you guys think it was necessary? Do you think it added to the story, or do you think it was superfluous? Brianna, I'd like to hear your answers first.
I think it made it just different enough from other Dracula movies that had kind of happened before it, right? And so it was like, what if? And just with the casting and everything, the names, I think they were kind of like, this allows them to give people a little bit more screen time, right? Because as you said earlier, Travis, like, Dracula is told from 4 points of view, right? And it's mostly journals and recaps and stuff. So you're not really getting the point of view from all the different characters. And so I think that romance kind of just let them create this separate world of Dracula in a sense, if that kind of makes sense. And they were like, more people are gonna see it, right?
Mhm.
Maybe. Shit, I don't know.
Jeremy, you're up.
Okay. Well, look, I think I don't know that necessary is the word I would use for this, for adding this element of a horrible nightmare creature wants to just bang one out with a pretty nice lady because he looks like his old wife. I don't know that necessary is the word for that, because it just makes a lot of weird scenes where like the scene where she's like, "Oh my god, you killed my best friend and I love you.
Let's make out."
Let's make out a bit."
Yeah.
And then he turns into a
that's a
pile
little,
of
like,
rats. And like, I get it could be necessary to help, necessary in the sense that it gives Winona Ryder a little more screen time, which is fun, but you could also give her literally anything else to do. So, I don't know.
I will say too that aspect of it is well, not that they were married in a past life essentially for her. Excluding Dracula in the 1400s, but the rest of it, the part where she knew him from before and he comes back and he seduces her from sort of that angle, that's another thing from Nosferatu directly. So
I will say, I do like the way Nosferatu does it better, of saying like desire is not always this like sexual thing as much. I mean, it still is in Nosferatu, but where it doesn't have to be this appearance based thing of like that kind of sexual lustful desire can be for power, can be for other things. And that's why like Nosferatu in both the old movie and the new is always just a monster. And I like that more. I don't like the romance in this, but it might be a personal preference thing, but here's my take. I want to know what y'all think. I think it's impossible to always escape the stamp of the time you're making a film in. Like, you're always going to look back even on movies now and say like that was made in the 2020s because it has this kind of flavor to it. But I think there's movies that have stood the test of time longer because they do it way more subtly And this movie, like when I say it bleeds the 90s, like bleeds the 90s. And I think that was kind of input as a way. The way I see it, when I was watching the film, I was like, I don't know if it was necessary. I think it was just the 90s. And everyone was like, make it sexy. Because that was, you look at the filmography of the 90s, like all joking aside, that kind of is a stamp of the 90s of like, make it sexy, make it sexy, make it big. And that we got some gold out of that, but we also got some stuff that I'm like, this didn't need to be sexy or big. Like you could have been a lot more subdued than you were, but because of the time you were trying to sell a movie in, you sold the movie the way that it needed to be sold. And I might be wrong on that, but that's kind of the feeling I got of like the 90s, early 2000s music video feeling of like, make it sexy, make it big. And that was, I didn't love it applied to a novel from so long ago.
Hey man, this is the biggest, sexiest Dracula we've ever seen. There's a
I don't
reason
know
he
about
signs
that.
his letters with just a big D.
Yeah.
He does. This is true. This is
But
true.
yeah, I am curious what you all think, and specifically Brianna, this kind of ties into a question I have for you, being someone who is interested in costumes. I've heard a lot of people in the world of costumes who are fans of the big, like fans of the loud. And I'm not. I never stylistically have been. It's one of the reasons I really don't like American Horror Story, the show, because it's so in your face. Is there a movie, like if you're to tell me, this is just a personal ask, a movie that you think does costumes just stunningly perfect, but isn't wow, you know?
I know you just watched Nosferatu, right? I would say that fits really well. They are essentially historically accurate down to her sleeves being able to be removed. So because she was poorer, right, than her best friend. So she has like the darker clothes. She has the stuff that doesn't quite match up. She has sleeves that detach because that leaves you with the one garment. Less bows and frills and stuff. And same with the guys, right? They're in very drab colors, you know. And all of that's very historical. I love over the top, wow, costume stuff. So picking something very subtle is a little tricky off the top of my head. But, you know, just have you ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
No, but I've heard I need to.
It's my comfort movie. I probably watch it like 10 times a year minimum, right? So that's one I would say is another like 90s, early 2000s movie. So it's very much like clothing of the time period. However, like, you know, she goes through this grand makeover. It's not grand, right? She's just goes from glasses to contacts. She's not wearing old lady clothes, but it is very subtle in the way that they do it because she makes slow changes, like down to her shoe choice. So that's one movie that I would say is very, like, the characters have their own personalities with their outfit choices, all of that. So
nice.
That's
Thank you.
subtle.
So,
I would say,
yeah.
Oh,
Go
go
on.
ahead, Jeremy. What's up?
Oh no. Well, I think I don't know. I mean, I appreciate a subtle costume choice as much as the next person to like help show character development and stuff. But sometimes all I want is the Fifth Element, where everybody's costume is exactly their personality.
Sometimes you just want it to be an anime in live action.
And I know you have something to jump in, Clay, but I think I asked that question because I've noticed, like, so I watch the YouTube channel sometimes, Corridor Crew, and they're like CGI guys. And they like movies that I just hate because I think when you like get into any industry closely, you can notice the beauty of the industry, even if it's in a movie that maybe isn't the greatest. Like, and so they'll compliment James Cameron all the time. and I think he's made some good stuff, but I don't think he's that great. I don't like the Avatar movies, but when you're talking CGI, those movies are like fantastic.
Yeah.
And I love hearing perspectives like you're bringing Brianna to Dracula of like, that's not something I would have been looking, but now that I'm like going back to the movie, I'm like, yeah, hot damn. They were like wizards with a sewing needle.
Yeah, like I had asked Clay, like, do I have to bring facts? Because all of the stuff I have, right, is just costume related. like, like Lucy's wedding dress is inspired by a lizard. Like,
Okay.
with the
Nice.
ruff, right? Like, that's nothing of the time period at all. But it's like that Predator sort of feel. So,
Yeah, very character-driven costume design for sure. Because I can tell you for sure, nobody ever made that Dracula armor, especially not in that time period. Even the samurai didn't have that kind of intricate steelwork. And that, like, if that was made of metal, that would have been so bananas.
yeah, it's
would've
made
been
to look like
comic.
filleted flesh.
Right.
Actually,
like-
I have the helmet tattooed on my leg.
That's what that is.
Hell
I
yeah.
think I've seen that. I think I've
But
seen
like-
that. Yes.
There we go.
There
That's
it is.
awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. But you know, in
That's
addition to being like bananas to make in that time period, because of all the ridges on it, that would have been awful armor. It would catch so
Oh.
many blades and
It would
spears.
break every time
Take it like
anything hit it.
through. Yeah.
It's got all these ridges just directing you through the body.
And
Yeah,
it's,
and if
so
it's
it's
not
kind of-
ridged, it's concave, and so it would be the
Yeah.
perfect place to shove a spear. It's like the exact way you don't make armor.
he survived, so
beautiful.
it's fine.
But he did. He did
Yeah.
survive. He did survive. This is
Yeah,
true.
but the storytelling through costumes in this movie is why it's one of my favorites. So
That makes sense. And you bring up a really good point, Travis, about industry, and you start to see the industry. I worked in the lighting department when I worked in film, so I definitely see like good lighting, and I love movies with good lighting, and that will like get me going. Even if the rest of the movie is like maybe not the best, but there's certainly like Neon Demon, for example. Don't love that movie, but the lighting's insane. And it's just like all over the place. And it's like, wow, okay, this is like if a student film was made by professionals. This is awesome. Because student films always want to have lots of lights. And,
Oh yeah.
like, I got this whole pack of gels. What am I supposed to do? Not use them?
I want every color on screen at all times.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're getting some red in there. Okay, bud.
Yeah.
But I did want to talk back to what you were talking about, Travis, about talking about the romance aspects and the portrayal of this story versus other Dracula portrayals. I actually liked that this movie took some risks in a way and I agree with you, it wasn't necessarily a risk, it's sort of a stamp of the time, so they were in some ways doing that. But Dracula is very much a story about lust. It is very much a story about seduction and about desire. And most Dracula adaptations go the Nosferatu route. Now, I think Eggers did it best so far that I've seen. You know, obviously the classics is the classics. Like the very original Dracula is awesome. I'm not taking away from that, but it's old as fuck. And like since then, the best like bleak version I've seen was Eggers' version. But like most of them go that bleak route. Even Van Helsing that we were talking about earlier, like it tries to be bleak, but it's also trying to be an action movie. So it doesn't really know what it
It
wants
tries to be bleak, but it also kicks ass. It's hard to do both.
But it also wants a superhero and a werewolf vampire fight. So like you can only have so many of these things in one movie and accomplish anything. But this movie is one of the most unique takes of Dracula I've ever seen, to be honest. It leans all the way in to the sexy, to the flamboyant, to the sort of like, it almost reminds me of like Dune, you know, from that time period, just with the weirdness, just with the absurdity.
Like the original Dune.
Yes,
okay,
the
yeah, I was
original,
like,
yeah.
wait,
80s
what?
Dune, not the
Yeah, the original Dune is a trip.
Yeah, I'm talking about the original Dune. Okay, rest in peace. But I definitely, it reminds me of that. It's like a very esoteric, a very bizarre, like leading all the way into the weirdness inherent in this story that could be there. Like, I agree with you, Brianna. It's like a fever dream, and there's something immersive about it. There's something immersive about it because you've got that unhinged ass hedge maze scene, and I'm just like, I hate this, but like also it kind of works for me because I'm like, that's where Lucy's at right now, you know? Like when this happened to her, she was out of control of herself, of her body, of her mind. And then she just sort of ends up in the middle of this hedge maze getting plowed by a werewolf. And she's like, I do not know how I got here, but I'm a vampire now. And I kind of love that. I think this movie actually accomplishes a lot of things that Bram Stoker, you know, with his original book seek to accomplish, which was a sense of disorientation, a sense of like lust overpowering the human faculties at all levels, and a sense of what people will do for power, for love, for lust, for eternal life. And it does it in a way that's different than these other Dracula adaptations. Nosferatu definitely is just straight power, you know? It's like, yeah, this I am an appetite. But like this movie is like, we've got appetites, baby. You know, hop in the bed. The sheets are fine. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, actually. It was super weird and lots of like bananas things that made no sense whatsoever. But I think it has earned my respect as a faithful and different adaptation, which is cool.
Yeah.
What do you want to say, Jeremy?
Well, I do kind of have a question for everybody because this film, it does a lot to sort of draw attention to the difference between most modern vampire takes being like a creature with identifiable power sets and rules and restrictions versus what we see in this film as sort of like the mythic vampire, where you can do anything the writers can think of while they are writing, and they're just kind of a force of nature. I don't know if anybody so my question would be to you guys, is there a style of vampire you guys prefer? Do you prefer this sort of bananas ass force of nature, or do you prefer Stephanie Meyer's teenage sex Draculas?
I will say I love the vampire as a force of nature as a shapeshifter because I'm a big fan of shapeshifters in general. But the original vampire was a shape-shifting creature primarily. That was like its main power, honestly. And like it can also shift not just into other creatures and stuff, but also into forces of nature, into mist, into wind, into rats. And you see that kind of infusing vampire lore in various ways throughout different adaptations. But yes, in Stoker's Dracula, and they put it all in there. They made sure to get it all in there. Like, let's get wolves in there, let's get bats in there, let's get rats in there, let's get wind and everything in there. So that I like that. Yeah, the fog.
Oh yeah, turn into some green smoke. That's dope.
He's a little bit like Zeus, but like evil Zeus.
I
like
mean, Zeus was already kind of.
I was going to say, was Zeus
fair? What else was Zeus? That's a good point. Zeus is terrible, a terrible person, a terrible god. So good point. He's just like Zeus. I take back the evil part.
Yeah. Brianna?
As a person who has read so many different vampire books, all the lore, I'm in this sweet spot of I like there to be consequences for the vampire. So I really like series where, you know, they can't go out in the sun. They die. They burst into flames, you know, like they have to sleep in the dark. No sun exposure. But like they have some superhuman powers, right? They are super fast or super strong or can levitate or something like that. Mind reading. I like that sweet spot of they can't do everything and they will die with if like an alternate to beheading. Like I'd like there to be one more way to kill them.
I do like that, Brianna. I just want to hop in and just agree I like that because vampirism is always portrayed as a curse,
Mhm.
but I don't. Sometimes it doesn't feel like a curse. Sometimes it's like you call this a curse, but I think I just have superpowers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It's
what's
just pretty people with superpowers and lots of boobs out sometimes.
Mhm.
and I'm immortal. Like, so what's the downside here? I just became a god. Why is everybody down on this? So I agree with you, Brianna. It's nice to have consequences and like a downside to the curse.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm gonna theology nerd out a little because I agree with Brianna 100% from the theology standpoint. I always want my vampires to be monsters. Vampires are demons, and I think immortality in itself is a curse. Like that's one thing that has really been like solidified
Agreed.
in a lot of the overtly and non-overtly Christian like mythos of vampires has been saying like spending eternity on Earth is not a good thing.
It's terrible.
And
You
then
don't want to do it.
you don't want to do it. That's not the goal. And the other thing, the light stuff is like so symbolic of like you are getting something from evil. Like evil is giving you this heightened power, but in exchange you will never see the light of God again. Like, and that's the sun. The like sun rising in the east is in Christian kind of writings on vampires is the representation of Christ rising in the east. And so it's like you're never going to see that light again. So is it worth it for you to like get these powers to sacrifice that which you are supposed to be walking towards? And is it worth it to live the rest of your days on earth if you're never going to live in the other place where you're supposed to live? And that is what I always want in my vampires. And I kind of hate whenever it's like, oh, they're sexy though. It's like, no, they're demons. Like that's my
Yes, but they're
personal take.
sexy demons,
They're
Travis.
sexy demons. They're sexy demons.
I will say one of my favorite like vampire portrayals TV stuff is True Blood because they have very normal people
Mhm.
as vampires. Like some of the vampires on the show were like turned in their 60s, right? Exactly how they were when they were turned. And they are not sexy. It's, luck of the draw when you were turned. If you are a
Mhm.
sexy vampire or if you are a normal below average person, you are just a vampire now.
Mm-hmm.
Fun shout out on that note to our boy Johnny B. Truant. But he has a series called Fat Vampire, which is a horror comedy, and it's awesome. But the
Mhm.
whole premise of it is a fat guy gets turned into a vampire, and the vampire council's like, we can't have this. So like
So
they're
they
trying to kill him through
Uh.
the whole series because he's overweight. And they're like, no, vampires have to be sexy. Like this is the only way it works. And it's an awesome series. So definitely recommend Fat Vampire if you haven't read it by Johnny B. Truant. I also wanted to say, if you've ever worked a night shift job, being a vampire would suck. Like
Yeah.
it sucks, dude. It's weird. Like, have any of you worked a night shift job? I used to go. I know Jeremy
Oh,
has.
yes.
Travis
It's
has.
so weird.
It's weird. You when you get off work, everybody else is just getting up. You're like on the opposite end of human existence. You're like walking home and kids are like lining up for the school bus and like everybody else is just getting ready to get on with their day. As soon as you get down for bed, everybody turns on their fucking weed whacker. Like it's a terrible, terrible
no.
Oh
time
yeah.
to
It's real
try to
bad.
be asleep.
And as a person with what I now know is chronic insomnia as of a few years ago and my ADHD diagnosis, I have gone like actual like weeks at a time without even seeing the sun. It messes with you really badly.
Yeah. Go touch grass and get some vitamin D. Like that's that's real stuff.
So that's
But
really
vampires, they can't do that, right? They can't do that. But
that depends on the vampires. There's a lot of things it can mean to be a Dracula, Travis.
I want to say, okay, and I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on this. One of the reasons I don't hate this movie, but one of the reasons I kind of dislike it. I'm going to read Francis Ford Coppola's filmography before Bram Stoker's Dracula.
God, please do.
The Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part 2, Apocalypse Now, The Outsiders, Rumblefish, all bangers so far. Godfather Part 3, he dips a little in quality, right? Then we get Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it's like, okay, someone told Francis to let loose, do some stuff. Then somebody saw that, and here's my theory. They were like, all right, rein it back in. He made the Rainmaker. And then some producer somewhere just was like, hey, remember Bram Stoker's Dracula? Just do that for the rest of your life now. And we get Tetro, Twixt, Henry Van Gogh's Vupar, Distant Vision, Betwixt Now and Sunrise, and the absolute, like, Bram Stoker's Dracula is tame compared to his 2024 release, Megalopolis. And if anyone has even seen clips from Megalopolis, this movie is like nothing compared to the bonkersness that is Megalopolis. And so my little bone to pick with Bram Stoker's Dracula, I want to hear y'all's thoughts. Did it kill Francis? Did it kill Francis's career? Because I think it might have taken him out the back, Lenny style, and done some things to his career.
I mean, it sounds like he's got the M. Night Shyamalan problem of you gotta keep a tight leash on that boy. Otherwise, anything can happen. And not
admittedly, I did skip over a few. So there's some in between stuff there, but I was just naming his big ones. So just to be clear.
I was just gonna say that depends on how you define career. How many major motion pictures has he made in the last 20 years? His career seems to be doing just fine. And like if he gets to make movies that he enjoys, I don't know, man. Fuck the regular
like he's
audience.
The winner
like
in that one, yeah.
Yeah. Like if he's
True.
getting enough people to watch him, that someone greenlit the next one and greenlit the next one and greenlit the next one. So fuck it.
Except Megalopolis, he did personally fund, and I think he dumped like $200 and some million into it, and it tanked.
And no one's ever heard of it. So
yeah, yeah, that one might have actually, like, literally, not figuratively, killed his career. But I don't know what. Here's my question out of all of this, and I'm going to ask Brianna first because you're our guest.
Okay.
When it comes to, so this is actually a question to you as a writer, as an author, both romance and horror. Do you think there's a level to which creatives, we all as creatives, I have not done the writing and producing that you all have, but I consider myself like I do some work, you know. Do you think there's a level to which we try and restrain the more loud aspects of our creativity when we're first starting out? Is that a wrong thing to do, or is it just what the market demands?
So I think as a creative, you need to do whatever you feel. And so exploring is a huge factor, right? To figure out who and what your voice is. So I think you just have to do whatever you want. And then maybe you find a market for it. You know, you don't have to take every little idea into a full thing, right? I'm sure just like me, there's millions of writers that have works in progress just sitting on their laptop. May or may never be finished, right? Like you have to work out all those big ideas because they could lead to something else. So, you know, this could be Coppola's fever dream, and he got to work with all the weird overlays and the weird, you know, all the ideas that he was like, well, let's just try it. Fuck it. Why not? And
yeah, and like
maybe we'll see something.
like kind of to Clayton's point, I don't think his name will never be tarnished like out of the annals of movie history, because he made The Godfather, which any 100 best movies list of all time, it's in the top 5.
It's gonna be yeah.
And I think to your point as well, and I know Clayton and Jeremy, you have stuff to pitch in, but like your comment made me think of like a Brandon Sanderson interview I saw recently, where he says most people aren't Patrick Rothfuss. Like, you're not going to write the first book you write is the like book that hits gold. You're not Stephanie Meyer. You're not J.K. Rowling. He's like, for every, I think he said for every Stormlight archive I've written like 15 short stories and books that never will see the light of day. But he tried stuff, like you said.
And even like big name authors, right? They have work that came before or after that big item. And people either love it or they hate it. So
yeah, I mean, George R. R. Martin's a great example of that. He used to write comic books, then he wrote horror for a long time, way before he wrote Game of Thrones, like decades before. And he had a lot of success with a novel, and then his next novel totally tanked, and he lost all his publishing credentials. Like, nobody would publish him for a long time, and he actually had a hard time selling Game of Thrones because of that. So like that happens all the time. I agree with Brianna, and you could go back to Johnny B. Truant for this as a good example of how it can work for you. But like, writing what you want, I think, is the only way to do it. It's incredibly important to write what you care about, write what you're passionate about, write what entertains you, what is fun for you to create. Because if you're not having fun, your work's going to suck. And that's just a fact. Like, if you don't care about it, you're not invested in it, you don't love it, nobody else is going to love it. Like, you have to love it, because that's the only way creativity works, in my opinion. Now, that being said, you have to know the rules to break the rules. Francis Ford Coppola is a perfect example of that. He proved movie after movie after movie after movie that he could follow the rules, like every single screen rule. So then by the time he made Dracula, he was like, I'm sorry, do you know who I am? I know how to make a movie, okay? I am doing this on purpose.
I made The Godfather. Okay, I made The Godfather.
Exactly. I don't need you to talk to me about this peacock feather scene. I'm shooting the peacock feather scene. Get out of my way. But once you've established yourself to a certain degree, I think it will become easier for you to sell whatever you want. Early on when you're new, absolutely. Like, you don't have to restrain yourself, and you shouldn't. You should write what you want. But like, just know you're only going to sell what you sell early on. Until you're established, that's just a fact of, that's just business. That doesn't have anything to do with your creativity, your value as a writer, any of that. That and business are completely separate. Your art is art, but once you start selling it, it becomes a product. And like, when it becomes a product, it's going to be looked at that way, because people that didn't write it, they don't give a shit where it came from. They give a shit whether it's going to be able to sell. And like, so I don't think you as a creative should ever stifle yourself, but I do think you have to be aware that, like, if you want to publish traditionally, if you want to publish on a big market, you want to be up on a big stage, you want like marketing from big companies behind you, you want them to back you and pick you up, you have to understand that they're only going to pick up certain things from a no-name author. Like, once you establish yourself a bit, and that's what's great about indie publishing, right? You can just publish your shit.
Yeah.
Now I will say this too: do the work. Don't just do that. Like, write a good story. That's important. Get an editor. Do all the work. Polish your stuff. You want to put good stuff out there, but I think you should write what you want to write. Just make sure you actually do the work. That's what's important to me.
Yeah, and I think I agree with both of you. Creative people need to explore all the way to the boundaries of their creativity, and then they need to be reined in. Like, you need someone, especially when you're less known, to just be like, okay, we're going to dial this back, because by the time you are finished writing this, you are going to be the only person still laughing. Okay? You're going to just going to chop that right off, and we're going to keep going from there. It's a very necessary piece of criticism. Otherwise, everything you make becomes way too specific. Case in point, Dracula. You can only ride the coattails of being Francis Ford Coppola for so long. Apparently so long.
That leads me to another question for all of you creatives, and I'll start again with you, Brianna. I've seen this in film more. I don't know if it's as much of a thing in books and writing. I feel like as an audience, we need to be, and this is more of just a let me know what you think question. I feel like as an audience, we need to be a little more by the story, by the product critical, not by the person. Because here's my thing. Like M. Night Shyamalan, great example. He's made mostly, I think at this point, his bad movies outweigh his good movies, I would say.
There's no debating.
No, there's no debating.
There's no debating.
Yeah.
He's made some really, really good stuff.
Mhm.
But now his name is almost tarnished in the sense of like, oh, M. Night Shyamalan, like, oh, we don't like him. And I go into his movies now with this bias of like, he's not good. And so I'm looking for all the bad that can come out of it, instead of remembering that he made The Sixth Sense, remembering that he made Signs, and saying like, this guy has potential to make a really good movie. And I wonder, the question out of all of this is, do you see that in writing? Because I don't usually when someone picks a favorite author, they kind of find a way to like every book they write. And I don't know if that's always true. They probably don't write good books every time.
No.
And is it a problem? Like, is it a problem that we take the bad products of a person and equate them to their whole career, and then take that critical lens into their movies going forward?
Ooh. As a reader, if I love an author, like I love a series, and I try one of their other things and I don't like it, I'm just like, it's not for me. Still love the other series. If they come out with something new, I will probably like it because I like their writing style. Their one thing just didn't land. That's how I approach it. But I don't pay attention to who directs movies and stuff. So I just watch movies that look like I will enjoy it.
That is a great way to watch movies.
But book-wise, and at some point, if there's an author who I've tried some of their stuff and I still don't like it, I just stop. I'm like, they're not for me. Cool. But if I know somebody who might be into it, I'll be like, hey, have you read them?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And I think there's a big difference in books and movies in this regard, because a lot more people are involved in the making of a movie and the consumption of a movie than are in a book. Now, it's not like one person in a book. That's a myth. There's a lot of editors involved. There's at least 3 to 4 editors in every book process. There is a publisher. There is a marketing agent that has a big role to play in like how your book is received by the general public, who buys it, who reads it, how it gets out there. But like ultimately it's the author. And like you can pretty much count on any book from a given author sounding like it was written by that author. That voice is authentic and it's usually there by any pro, I will say. Some people early on are still figuring out their voice, but they develop it too. And then it's there. And like a good example, Stephen Graham Jones. I'm a huge Stephen Graham Jones fan, as you guys know, but I don't like the Indian Lake trilogy because I don't like slashers. I still like those books are still written well. They're still like Stephen Graham Jones, but I just don't like slashers. And so him nerding out about slashers for like 3 books isn't really my jam. I'll wait until he writes Buffalo Hunter, which is vampires killing colonists or colonizers. Like, let's go. Like, I'm on board with that. That's back to like the Only Good Indians territory, and I will always read his short fiction, right? So I'm with you on that. But the movie, there's so many more aspects to consider. There's who's in it, there's who shot it, there's the lighting department, the costume design, everything. There's a million people that go into making a movie, and the director is just the name that gets stamped on top of it. And so, I mean, that director has a massive impact on the movie and how it's made, obviously, but like the director usually isn't the writer, you know? The director usually never pretty much is the cinematographer, which is half of the story in a movie, if not more than that, depending on the movie. I mean, you look like what is it? What's that movie called? 1812
or 1912?
1917.
1917. There we go. We got there.
That movie is 75% told by the camera. Like the camera is the script, you know, and it's beautiful, but like the writer of that movie, the director of that movie, the actors in that movie, they all play such a pivotal role in how well that movie came together. And like, I don't think you can compare that to a book and the cohesiveness of an author's body of work compared to a director's body of work. Well, some directors manage to do it, like great leaders inspire great teams, but like, and those directors really stand out. But I think it's more common that an author's books are consistent than maybe a filmmaker's work is consistent, like a director's work is consistent.
Well, yeah. I mean, because you do kind of have to be more forgiving of that kind of thing with movies, because like even for small indie things, it takes at minimum a small town's worth of people who all bringing their own influences in some small way to bring out the final product, even like, and that can go all the way up to like a small city's worth of people when you get to like, I don't know, a Marvel movie. But it's, you know, but yeah, I don't know. I think in my experience, I feel like, you know, people start off more restrained, more sort of testing the waters, and then they just dial in and get way more specific as they go. And that is, which is why at a certain point, I'm probably just going to stop watching Quentin Tarantino movies.
Well, you know? He's only going to make one more, so you don't really have to worry about that.
He's said that for like the last 3 movies he's made. So
no, he hasn't. He's always said 10. He's always said 10.
Okay, well, whatever, man.
I'm done at 10. And he's on 10. And it was supposed to be made this year, and then he pulled the plug because he didn't like it. And I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see. Ridley Scott famously in an interview said, shut up about the 10 movies and just make movies, you bitch. Or something like that.
You know, that's fair. Because, like, what exactly is he planning to do after number 10?
Yeah. Like, and Ridley's like 88 and still making Gladiator films, but you know.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great point, Clayton and Brianna and Jeremiah. Because I noticed this trend with my Jeremiah and
got upgraded.
Jeremy, good Lord. I've known
got
you
the extra syllable for free.
Mixing names. I noticed this own trend with myself of like Michael Bay has always been the bane of my existence. But he made 13 Hours, a war movie, and I had people that I trusted being like, hey, go watch it. It's a good war movie. And I'm like, I don't watch Michael Bay. And then I did. And like, yeah, he made a good movie. And I think I had to like take a step back and be like, all right, like I need to stop approaching everything as if they make one bad thing, all bad things happen. But I think there's another aspect to this, and that's money. Like I think a reason people can't go bonkers on their first film is because money. Like they can't, very few times a first-time director gets just millions chucked their way. And so they have to be subdued because they don't have the resources. Whereas I don't know if that's a problem with writing. I'm sure it's less of a problem because you can write the story however you want. Like there's still money for editing, but you know.
Yeah.
Same problem though. I mean, it's like if you're a first-time author with no agent, you will not sell to Penguin Random House. You're just not going to do it. Like you can't even talk to Penguin Random House without an agent. And most authors have to go for like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7, 10 years to get an agent. Like it's crazy. And and then some indie publishers go out and just indie publish their book, and then they get TikTok famous, and then they get picked up by Penguin Random House. Like,
yeah.
So it's the same problem. It's like, you're right. It's not a logistical thing like it is in film where it's like, no, we can't have dragons in this movie because dragons be expensive. Making dragons look good on our budget is impossible. So can we turn the dragons into frogs? But like that, and that's another thing about film, right? Like it's just not it's such a different medium, especially in genre fiction, especially in fantasy, sci-fi, and horror. Like, well, maybe not horror, actually. Horror is one of the most profitable film genres, and ironically, it's one of the least profitable written genres. Like, it's hard to sell writing in horror, but it's easy to sell film in horror. And I'm not exactly sure of all the market research that goes behind that, but it is true. Horror writing is getting more popular right now, but that's long been a theme.
Mm-hmm. And I have one more. You brought up dragons. I have one more thing, and I know we're trying to wrap up soon, but so, and this ties all the way back to Dracula. So don't worry, it's not a random question.
Oh, yes.
Dracula means dragon.
Yeah.
Dracula means dragon, and here's my bit. This movie, in my opinion, not scary. And I think a lot of vampire movies after this movie and before it, not scary. Vampires should be scary, and this is why it ties to dragons. Dragons, not scary. Why? They should be. They're giant, fire-breathing, carnivorous lizards. What isn't scary about that? Why are they always only in action films? And there's my thing. Is Dracula scary? That's question one. And two, have dragons been scary in film ever? And can we change that? Can we make dragons scary again?
Well, I think, no, this movie is not scary. I don't know that it is any one specific thing at all. Now, vampires, I think this applies to vampires and dragons, and I think that they are often shown as being like threatening things, but I think there's so little of like actual horror featuring them that it's hard to picture them as being scary. Like, the closest I can think of with dragons is Reign of Fire, but I don't feel like that's not horror. That movie just rules.
That movie does rule.
It rules, And aside from that, you just get the sort of fantasy of like, but what if we rode a dragon? And in the case of vampires, like, what if we rode a vampire? If you know what I'm saying. Yeah.
Wow.
Truly.
Play, Brianna.
Yeah, vampires should be scary. I totally agree with that. I was trying to think of a dragon movie that's scary, and all I can think of is Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah, that dragon's scary.
And I'm just like, I think that's the only dragon where I've been like, whoa.
To be fair, that dragon starts off as a scary lady.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, yeah. They're both kind of otherworldly, right? So we don't really have this could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's not that kind of scary,
Mm-hmm.
but they should be both.
I think
100%.
so.
Yeah.
I
There's
agree.
a couple of vampire movies that are like
Oh yeah.
terrifying.
The first half of 30 Days a Night is
That's a scary movie.
the first half. Like when
first
the second half, it turns into an action movie at the end. But like when they're first
Yeah.
getting into the town and first like
Totally.
so creepy.
Great example.
Especially like foreign takes.
Mhm.
Terrifying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pro scary dragon because I
What's
can't
that-
think of anything.
What's that Scandinavian vampire movie? The little girl.
Oh, Let the Right One In.
Yes, Let the Right One In. That one's kind of
Yeah.
creepy.
That's a
That's a good vampire flick.
great take on Renfield too. Like that was such a good how
Yes.
Renfield is like actually was like the childhood crush, the little boy, but then he grows up and is just like a full grown man, but he's like her protector now. I thought that was like such a unique take on the Renfield tale.
It's a good movie. I really like Let the Right One In.
Let's see,
I think
vampires are... Sorry, you go ahead.
Eggers Nosferatu is scary. That's a
Oh,
horror
yeah.
movie.
That's,
But I would say not a whole lot of vampire stuff before that is truly scary. Because you're right, it always turns into action films, and I think dragons have the same problem. I think they've become really commonplace, staples of the genre, and I think that can be a big downfall to a creature. Too many people know too many things about the lore, and therefore there's too many expectations, too many tropes tied to it. And I think vampires and dragons both have that. At this point, like, you don't very often see a dragon that isn't somewhat deified. Like, they're all kind of godlike. They all tend to have like telepathic abilities or be these otherworldly creatures. You see the rare occasion where they're more animalistic, but even then, again, it just goes back to like big game hunting kind of feel. And it's like in Reign of Fire. And then it's kind of like, what are we doing here? Vox Machina was
I was
a
just
pretty
gonna
scary
say,
dragon.
yeah, Raishan.
yes.
Raishan
Yeah.
with the shape shifting and the
Yeah, that's some good
roll.
shit right there.
That's an animated series. If y'all haven't seen it, Vox Machina is an animated series on Netflix.
That's on Amazon.
Amazon.
Okay, Amazon.
Based on Critical Role.
I've
Lovely.
played D&D game that was like 3 years long.
It's really good. Vox Machina is really good.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a spooky dragon. Like, you get some actual horror there. Like, when that thing shows up, it's like, oh, you guys are all screwed. And another example I would say is the beginning of like Godzilla -1. I mean, that's not an action movie. That's horror. Like when little Godzilla shows up and just kills all those guys, it's like, that's what it would be like to fight a dragon. Like, this is what it looks like. You have no chance whatsoever to kill that dragon. And that was that was a good portrayal as well, I think. Godzilla then turns into a Godzilla movie, which -1's an awesome movie. But I do think that very first scene with Godzilla showing up at the island is a horror scene, you know. And I think you can make an argument for the Nazgul in the Lord of the Rings films as well are a pretty like scary dragon, because when they show up, they're more of an ominous presence, specifically in the Two Towers when they're more hunting Frodo and Sam. And I've always made the argument that I think the Frodo Sam storyline is largely a horror, has a lot of horror elements that it leans on. They're crossing the Dead Swamp. They've got the Nazgul hunting them, and the Nazgul in that context are kind of a horror element because they're looming. They're you hear the scream and you see them above and you're hiding from them, but they don't like attack. You're not cutting anyone's head off, you know, like you are in the Return of the King. So I would say those are some examples, but I agree. Like, I do think it just comes down to being such staples of the genre that there's so many expectations attached to them that people want to deliver on. It's hard to like do something different than that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say vampires feel pretty scary in Blade up until Blade shows up.
Well, that's the same thing, right? It's like until it turns into an action movie.
That's like 3 entire minutes of being like, oh man, this is pretty, oh geez.
But all right, yeah. That was my question for sure.
Well, that was a hell of an episode, y'all. Thanks for being here, Brianna. Thank you so much for being here. It was really fun. Can you tell everybody in the audience a little more about yourself, where they can find your stuff and what you have coming out?
Sure. Yeah. So once again, my name's Brianna Malotke. I'm basically my name everywhere. So on Instagram, my website's my last name. I'm on the Slasher platform if there's any horror fans out there. You had mentioned you wanted me to talk about my one horror book. Is it the Fashion Trends Deadly Ends? Yeah, so that's kind of my baby of costume design and horror. So it's all inspired by historical fashion trends over the years and like what people decided to do to stay in fashion and died. So a lot of stuff caught on fire. They did rib removals for smaller waists. Everything was poisonous, right? Because we didn't really understand how chemicals worked, all that sort of stuff. So it goes head to toe. So there's a little bit of research, an illustration, so you kind of know what's happening, and then the horror poetry. It's mainly all body horror. And yeah, I do write romance, and so my third book in my current series, Ink and Love, comes out this month, and they're very saucy. And yeah.
Excellent. And I will have one question to follow up, just because we're doing an episode on Dracula. When we covered Nosferatu, we did sort of mention what we thought was maybe the best line ever spoken in a vampire film. Do you have one that beats out Wesley Snipes' line from the film Blade, where he said, "Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill"?
I mean, I really enjoy in Dracula when Van Helsing's just like, where he pops out of the weeds and he's like, "Where'd the blood go?" And then he just like disappears further into the backyard.
I know, he just disappears and like, see, magic.
It's just like such a curt line.
I don't know.
He's just like,
Where'd the blood
go?
And it's Anthony Hopkins.
And the guys are like, "What the fuck are you on?
Yeah.
Like, did you give blood? What is happening?" But I really like that one because I'm just like, it's so funny.
It's very good. You know.
All right, everybody. Well, this has been another episode of Fermented Fiction with Brianna Malotke. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next time. Goodbye.
Wait, do we want to rate?
Oh, we got to rate. Yeah, duh.
Oh.
Jeremy, thanks, dude. I'm getting
Yeah, sometimes I'm on
getting
task.
tired.
Not
Sure.
goodbye.
Jeremy's on it. Okay, first,
Wow.
we will do what we always do, which is rate this movie, but we will do it in our Fermented Fiction way, which is how many drinks do you need to enjoy this movie to its fullest extent? And we will start with you, Brianna.
I don't think I've ever had a drink while watching this movie.
Oh my god.
Okay.
So 0, I guess.
Yeah,
but now I
'cause
kind
you
of want to
enjoy
get tipsy and watch it because I feel like I would have a different, stronger argument for why it's an amazing movie.
How many do you think you're going to drink when you try that for the first time?
Let's go with 3.
Yeah.
3 Mai Tais?
3 alcohol.
3 alcohols, please.
Yep.
3 units of booze. Thank you.
Sounds good.
3
alcohol,
alcohol,
potions.
Please.
Yep.
I love it.
Jeff?
I'm gonna say pour 1 for the beginning, and then get through the little narration part at the beginning, and then as soon as you see the butt hair, finish that one, then pour another one, and when you see Rapist Wolfman, down that one, and then at that point, your drunk brain is going to make the decision for you. It's either going to be, do we ride this roller coaster all the way through, or do we shut this off and go watch The Godfather? And you follow whatever intuition that slightly tipsy brain drinks. So 2 drinks, and then either ride the roller coaster out or go watch Coppola's masterpiece.
I'll have to do that.
Yeah. Have you not watched The Godfather?
No.
Oh my god.
Uh,
Well, I will say it's nothing like Bram Stoker's
It's not.
Dracula, unfortunately.
It's not
It
Dracula.
couldn't
I probably
possibly-
won't like it.
Yeah, exactly. If you like Coppola for Bram Stoker's Dracula, you're gonna be like, this isn't my Coppola.
I will
it's
say,
going to be a very different experience.
no shame. I'm like a self-proclaimed movie geek, and it took me till this year to watch The Godfather, and I admitted to my friends that I've been lying about that for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Because people are like, oh, have you watched? Of course, I've watched The Godfather.
Obviously, I'm
Naturally,
not
yeah.
eating
I had not watched The Godfather, so no shame at all.
No.
It took me a while, but it's a masterpiece.
Jeremy?
Yes. Okay, so my rating. Yeah, this is a tough one. I think you definitely need 1 at the beginning, and then more. You'll need 1 every time the movie does the weirdest match cut you've ever seen. So that's gonna be several more. I think that's 9 to 10 more, and then you'll probably want one every time the American guy is there and he's got the best outfit in the room, which is literally every time he's in the room. So
The fringe jacket.
it's so good. Just look at the
You
all the
know
way
he's
down the
the
arm.
American.
It's like a
from
foot
any
long. Oh my
shot.
god.
That was another Mummy connection that I was
Yep.
like, what is with
Totally.
these like
Oh, yeah.
Universal movies that are British setting, but they want to put in like the cowboy that's just
I love
blatantly
the-
the cowboy.
Where he's like, watch your colonial tongue. I'm like, what a diss. Okay.
Oh, what a diss.
Got
Also,
him.
the accents, I never got to that, but the fact that
Oh,
Anthony
Jesus.
Hopkins, he just loses accent, and then to bring it back, he'd just be like, yeah.
Yeah.
The accents. Oh my god, Keanu Reeves and his accent. Go ahead and drink something else for that because it's just horrible, and the world is undoubtedly a better place for it. So that's good. I think I landed in the neighborhood of 30 to 40.
Oh. That's like a shot every time you're like, oh, I don't like this choice.
Yeah, it's a shot every time. It's like, oh, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
Oh
Okay.
boy. I think you should just like do a power hour throughout the first hour of the film. And while you're doing that, also take a shot every time you're just vaguely aroused.
That's
And by
hard.
the
There's
time-
so many boobs.
By the
I
time
was-
you're done with this movie, you will be as aroused as Coppola wanted you to be from this movie. And it's
I
going to be
was
glorious.
keeping like a nipple tracker.
There's a lot of nipples. How many did you
I
count?
was like, who gets the most nipples exposed? Where are we
Yeah.
at? Like, is it because at first I was like, boobs. Do we need more? Do we need less? Is it equal? You know, like how
Mhm.
maybe it was
Yeah.
all just female boobs, and that's not what you want. You want equal.
Yeah.
So I started keeping a tally, and then I was like, still not enough.
This movie
Still
made
not.
us look at a lot of nipples, and I feel like they could
And
have shown us a
close.
lot more.
And close. Like there's some close-ups of
Just
Yeah.
right up in there.
right up in there.
It's
Like,
not
oh,
about
did
the
you
boob
see
at
it?
that point. It's about the nipple at that point, which is a whole different animal. You know?
Yeah, that's art, you monkeys.
Right. Very true. Very true. And some of us just don't understand it. But if you drink enough, you might. So there you have it. This has been another episode of Fermented Fiction. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here, Brianna. It was awesome to have you on the
Thank you.
show. Go buy Brianna's stuff. All her links will be in the show notes. Whether you like romance, horror, or poetry, she has all three of them motherfuckers. Have a good time out there. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Ah.
Thank you so much.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Yes.